An MSNBC segment.
Joining us now, the Democratic nominee in the New York City mayoral race,
Vote blue no matter
Zoran Mamdani.
We were talking about important things, Mika.
No,
I found out. Lemire gave me this information.
Lemire is.
I found out he is a commie after all.
Yeah.
He's an Arsenal fan.
I know. That was tough.
Seriously, I'm
guilty on the Arsenal.
And Metsy-ish.
Oh, by the way, it's worth noting, because we haven't covered him as much lately, but overwhelming cultural victory from Mamdani. Basically, everybody has bent the knee. Nobody is paying attention to or taking Cuomo seriously, even after Eric Adams was forced out of the race, though he was forced out after it was too late for his name to be removed from the ballot. But like the fact that he's getting pretty positive coverage on Morning Joe, which is like one of the most right-wing Democrat-aligned, platforms.
No, the Mets are fine. That's what we like.
As long as it's not the Yankees.
Then it's worse than a commie, right? So anyway, thank you for being with us. We've got a lot of questions to ask you. I just want to ask them generally. Always ask this question of people that are out campaigning. It's old politician in me, I always found you knock on doors. It takes you about 3 doors to figure out what people are talking about. What are you hearing people talking about more than anything else? When you see them, even people that aren't supporting you, what are they concerned about?
Cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. I've been hearing this since we launched the campaign last October, which is the fact that New York City has become the most expensive city in the United States of America. And I'm hearing from New Yorkers that they can't afford their rent, they can't afford their childcare, their groceries, even $2.90 to ride the bus.
What do they think you can do about it?
Well, what they see is the fact that the mayor has the power.
He's like the perfect version of the shit the Democrats in Congress have been cynically weaponizing for ages, which is they say, don't focus on the culture war issues, go back to the kitchen table issues like the budget. But then their solutions are like, we're going to have a credit for first-time home buyers or some stupid bullshit like that. Not actual transformative change that would make a difference in the long run, The aggregate change of all of Kamala Harris's economic policies would not have even come close to compensating for the cost of living increase over the course of Biden's term. Like at the most, it's stalling. And not even that. I think it's just slowing the rate of everything getting made worse. You need to actually, like, you can, the Democrats think of the kitchen table issues as a way of being moderate and avoiding the radical stuff. Mamdani sees it as a new opportunity to be radical. I think that's the real difference there, It's true. Mamdani doesn't talk about cultural issues that much, mostly because by virtue of having a strong stance in it, which the Democrats don't, he gets to not repeat it over and over. Kamala Harris, the Democrats in Congress, they have to talk about trans people or whatever the ICE, immigration, so on and so forth, in large part because their answers have been wishy-washy, Are you or are you not in favor of this? What do you believe on this? Da-da-da. For Mamdani, he can just say, no, here is me at a pride rally holding not just a progress flag, but the trans flag specifically. I remember that. That was a really good move there, No one can. So what are you going to do? Bring up trans issues with Mamdani? What do you know what his position is? He's not going to argue with you about it like a loser. There's no like hypocrisy holding your feet to the fire. If you bring it up with him, everyone will know you're just wasting your time. You got to talk with him on the issues he's talking about, which is the kitchen table issues, which is affordability, which he sees as an opportunity to be radical in a new direction. You don't distract from one set of issues with the other. You hold firm on one, you focus on what works.
To determine whether rents will rise for more than 2 million New Yorkers who live in rent-stabilized apartments. This mayor increased the rent on those New Yorkers by more than 12%. I've said I would freeze it for 4 years. They also know that...
I'm sorry, somebody linked this and I haven't seen it, so I'd like to take a look. Until It's Done, episode 4, Sylvia Rivera. Yeah, sure. What's going on?
Everyone calls me Sylvia. I've had this name for 9 years. This is respect.
I'm on the Christopher Street Pier, or as it was called in Sylvia Rivera's day, the Christopher Street Docks. In the 1970s, homeless queer New Yorkers had been pushed to the margins of a hostile society. But it was here, on the physical margins of our city, that they found a home. Sylvia was one of those New Yorkers. She arrived here at the age of 11, where she immediately landed in the center of the gay rights movement. She befriended the legendary Marsha P. Johnson, protested at Stonewall, and led marches for equality. But even among the queer community, trans New Yorkers were excluded. Rivera and others were discouraged from walking in Pride, their participation erased from Stonewall history.
I believe in us getting our rights, or else I would not be out there fighting for our rights.
This cruelty took a toll. Rivera developed a substance abuse problem and was often homeless. When she had nowhere left to turn, she would sleep here, waves lapping nearby. Yet no matter what hardships she faced, Sylvia Rivera advocated for others. She and Johnson founded STAR to house and feed trans kids. The Christopher Street Pier is like our city, a place of immense contradictions. It's where outsiders found belonging, and it's also where Marsha P. Johnson's body was found, the victim of a suspected murder no one was ever prosecuted for. But even amidst this, we can chart a clear path forward that makes our city inclusive. Since taking office, Donald Trump has waged a scorched earth campaign against trans people. The man with the most power.
It is worth remembering, and pardon me for being optimistic here, but like trans people basically didn't exist in any, like in civilized society up until quite recently. And the degree of prominence and like cultural respect, and I mean respect, that they've received in a very short length of time is pretty extraordinary, you know? And even though we're suffering from like a, you know, fascist backlash to progressivism broadly and anti-trans rhetoric and so on, it hasn't really dislodged trans people from like the cultural consciousness, especially in media, right? Like trans people are still super prominent in a lot of spaces in Hollywood, video games, the music scene. You know what I mean? Like what the fascist wants is not merely to repress trans people politically because, you know, it makes your life more inconvenient. Yeah, that's part of it. What they want is for you to disappear completely. They want you to be removed from the cultural record. They haven't been. It's not working. If nothing else, trans people are too prominent in the minds of people who hate trans people. You can't actually erase trans people from the cultural record when you know, you have like right-wing lunatics on Twitter posting trans chudjacks or whatever. It doesn't actually work. You know what I mean? Like you've only elevated them in hostility, sure, but you're not removing them from the conversation, which means that they remain prominent. I'm not saying that's a sweet deal for trans people or anything. I'm just saying, you know, they're not getting what they want.
Has expended enormous energy targeting those with the least. New York will not sit idly by while trans people are attacked. We'll deploy hundreds of lawyers to combat Trump's hate, make New York City an LGBTQIA+ sanctuary city, and create the Office of LGBTQIA+
You can't put the shit back in the ass.
To allocate millions for youth and adult housing programs, as well as gender-affirming care. We can't bring Sylvia back, but we can honor her memory by building a city where trans New Yorkers are cherished. In a time of darkness, New York must be the light.
He's so good. Sorry, just to be clear, when I said he, I meant Mamdani. I don't want any of you woke lords taking me out of context, okay? The image changing was not, it was a setup. I meant Mamdani.
Childcare after housing is the highest cost for a family in this city. And the previous administration, Bill de Blasio, delivered universal pre-K. This admin has just sat and watched as it's pricing people out. We are going to actually deliver universal childcare.
And how much childcare through what age?
6 weeks to 5 years.
Okay, and how much do you estimate that'll cost?
We've seen estimates of around $6 billion or so.
$6 billion. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so here's the question. I'm a small C conservative.
Honestly, $6 billion is super affordable when you're talking about free childcare for the entirety of New York City. That's like super, super, super affordable. And we're talking about like free childcare is an insane. That's not like a small. That's not like a small policy. That's colossal.
Small government conservative. I believe billionaires should pay their fair share. I also understand.
I would reach across and shake your hand, but it's a big table.
It's a big table, but I also understand there's a delicate balance there. You can't tax billionaires here so much, and you can't tax companies here so much that decide they're going to go to Connecticut or Texas or Florida.
They get taxed if they operate in New York City. No business is going to say, taxes raised slightly in New York City. I will now take my business elsewhere. It's New York City.
So how do you How do you, while people are shouting and screaming that you're a socialist, how do you balance those two competing interests? You got to keep the businesses here. At the same time, you got to fund these programs.
You know, I think one of the first ways is that you think about your
They
fiscal
could just go to the
policy
other
and
New
how
York
it'll
City.
actually impact these kinds of corporations. So the proposal we've put forward is to raise the state's top corporate tax rate to match that of New Jersey. And now what you're bringing up is, what if that company leaves? Now, what we see is with corporate taxes here in New York State, they apply to any business that's doing business here. You could be headquartered in Orlando.
Right.
As long as you're doing business here, you're subject to that tax. And companies are going to keep doing business here because of the fact that
What
it's
about
one
the
of the largest
individual?
economies.
What about the individual taxpayer?
So what we're talking about is raising taxes on the top 1% of New Yorkers. They make $1 million or more a year by 2%. And what we've seen is that actually the top 1%, they leave at 1/4 the rate of other tax brackets in New York City. And one of the actual determining factors is quality of life.
Yeah, like if you're worried about people fleeing the state because of taxes or because of like money concerns, poor people are much more likely to leave because they can't afford shit, you know? And if all the poor people leave New York City, you hollow out the core of New York City. Like, you don't want New York City to turn into Dubai, right? Where it's just a playground for the wealthy. All the poor people there commuted from New Jersey because no one can afford to live in the city unless they're ultra wealthy or some kind of like rich tourist or whatever. And all the culture of the city is hollowed out. New York City is a cultural juggernaut. It's not just like a big wealthy playground. New York City, like, I feel bad for the people who live in Manhattan because all of Manhattan gets treated the way every downtown gets treated in America, which is people treat it like it's not a place where people live. It's just a place for like suburban families to drive into, to park at a parking lot and go to the mall or whatever. All of Manhattan is a mall, but people live in Manhattan like a bajillion people, you know?
And this is at the heart of our vision for government, is to deliver the best quality of life in this country. That every New Yorker knows that for any dollar they're taxed, it's getting an ROI that they have not yet seen in this city. One that is going to transform what it means to be safe, what it means to live in a city that's clean, and also what it means to live in a city that takes care of your basic needs.
So here's what I found about New Yorkers, and even liberal New Yorkers.
Why did Dems not say this? They're in bed with the elite.
I found this through the years. They like to talk about how liberal and how progressive they are, but if quality of life issues start slipping, they suddenly become very Republican, and they become very conservative. So I think this is something
like how Mamdani's face here. Hold on.
And they become very conservative.
Mamdani internally is like, well, yeah, these people are evil. These people are enemies of America. Yeah, continue.
So I think this is something Bill de Blasio, a progressive, even understood. Crime fell to the lowest number. It's been, New York Times said, my God, we have to go back to the 1950s to even guess when it's been this safe in New York City. A lot of people are afraid if they elect you, you're going to take your eye off the ball on making New York a safer place.
What was this pivot that he just did? What was this pivot? I thought we were talking about taxes. Now we're talking about the crime rate. What?
You're going to be hostile towards the police. You're going to change the police commissioner. What do you tell those people who are concerned about safety, quality of life issues?
Hey, you know what's going to make New York City a lot safer? Providing proper funding to services that help poor people and homeless people, you know? For one, New York City is already very safe. Right now, New York City is extremely safe. It is. If you disagree, you have to look at the data. I'm sorry, I can't argue with your delusions. But like, if what you mean by safety is you shouldn't have to have homeless people staring at you weirdly on the subway, you know what? I'll be honest with you. I've been in New York City. I was there for a week, and there were a lot of pardon me for the dehumanizing language, kind of shambly looking people. You know, they were a little, not just homeless, but, you know, I get it. Okay. This is what happens when you neglect a portion of the population to the point that basically all of them develop mental illness and drug dependency issues. This is fixable, you know, you just have to spend money on it.
Homelessness, people that don't think, liberals don't think it's progressive for somebody who's mentally ill to be sleeping on a grate when it's 4 degrees below zero.
Let's be clear, it's not progressive for that. And quality of life actually has to be at the heart of any progressive politics. And public safety will be the cornerstone for delivering our affordability.
My mom says, like, New York City is unsafe and stuff. Why would you want to live there? And I, for some reason, have to remind her, you're living in motherfucking St. Louis. Yeah, to the fact that, like, seriously, it's unbelievable to me how much people are susceptible to propaganda. St. Louis is one of the most dangerous cities in the United States. I think it's like number 2 or 3 or something. New York City is nowhere near the top, not even close.
Agenda. And this, what we've seen right now is.
So you're saying you're putting public safety as job number one.
It is a critical focus.
You make the community safer when you decrease inequality, when poor people have their provisions taken care of and they don't have to turn to crime and they're not as susceptible to drugs and the homelessness epidemic is dealt with because there are treatment programs and so on and so forth. You make it better. It is not a coincidence that the crime rate in America, all over America, skyrocketed in tandem with our level of economic inequality. Seriously, the 1980s, it wasn't just crack cocaine. A lot of it was also a direct consequence of the gutting of social programs, of federal expenditure, and so on, Reagan, so on and so forth. Vaush, we don't have the money for it, bro. We're spending money we don't have. What are you talking about? This is New York City. This is a municipal budget. It has nothing to do with the federal debt. Also, you could get the money if you tax the money.
Workers say
absolutely,
making sure that when kids walk to school, they can walk there safely. When they're in school, absolutely. You like cops.
Look, yes,
you like police officers.
Jesus Christ. Fealty you have to demonstrate to the NYPD as a mayor.
Police officers are going to be the ones we partner with to deliver public safety. And I just want to say a few things, which is that when you ask New Yorkers, where do they feel least safe? They'll often tell you when they're using public transit. They'll say, when I'm on the subway, when I'm in the train, I'll see a homelessness crisis, a mental health crisis, and we've asked cops to be responsible for these crises, whereas their jobs should really be focusing on serious crimes. And so our vision is allow officers to focus on shootings and murders and the serious crimes that we know New Yorkers are concerned about, and have a Department of Community Safety that deals with the mental health crisis, that deals with homelessness, that actually deploys dedicated teams of mental health outreach workers to the 100 subway stations with the highest rates of these incidents to take those New Yorkers out of the system.
Why is he bending the knee regarding cops? He's not. He's cleverly using rhetoric that tries to appeal to the largest number of people possible, which is what you have to do if you're a politician. He's doing a good job of it, too.
Subway and connect them with the services that they need. That's how we're going to deliver.
And if they stay in that subway, if it's the same person day in, day out in that subway,
doing what?
Will give them the authority.
Doing what? Doing what? Why are we just a person in the subway? Doing what?
To make sure they're taken out of the subway.
Yes, this is the focus of the Department of Community Safety, is to connect them with services. And if, after we exhaust each and every issue, involuntary confinement is there, but it should be a last resort of what we do.
So a defining theme for the next mayor will be the relationship with the White House and President Trump. And Trump and White House officials seem to be salivating at the idea of you winning. We've heard from the president saying, we can't have a socialist.
So you've got that in common with President Trump.
There you go. So what would there's threats to cut funding. There are threats to send in the National Guard, a la what we've seen in Chicago. If the White House tries to do those things and you're mayor, what's the response?
What we're already seeing is a White House that is engaging.
ICE would not set up well in New York, man. ICE is facing a ton of pushback, not even in Chicago right now. They're getting protested at Broadview, an hour outside of Chicago. All of those scenes of protests, what you've seen in the news where, Chicago protests against ICE, against federal officers, that's in Broadview. It's an hour out. You setting up like a massive federal push in New York would not go very well at all.
In the political persecution of its perceived enemies, right? We're seeing that whether we're talking about Attorney General Tish James, whether we're talking about others across this country. And what is so enraging for so many in this city is that Donald Trump ran on 3 promises. He ran on the punishment of his political enemies, he ran on easing the cost of living crisis, and he ran on engaging in a program of mass deportation. It's that second promise of the cost of living crisis that brought so many to his campaign, and yet he's unable and unwilling to deliver on that because he's beholden to the very billionaires that are profiting off of that crisis. So what he's doing is focusing entirely on this agenda of punishment and cruelty. And what I would do is to actually stand up for New Yorkers. And what I mean by that is you can see in this race right now.
This is true, and it's also an extremely good line that Democrats broadly need to repeat. Trump promised a lot of stuff, but now that he's in office, all he has to talk about is more cruelty. That's it. That's the only thing his administration focuses on day to day. More and more over-the-top cruelty, more and more, Stephen Miller going on the news to let slip that he's the one directing ICE, That's the only thing he talks about. The administration is completely given up on talking about lowering costs. They don't even push it themselves. The Trump administration did a deal with AstraZeneca, like just a couple of days ago, talking about Trump MD lowering pharmaceutical costs. Nobody's talking about it because everyone recognizes it for what it is, right? A big stupid grift. Remember when Trump threatened additional 100% tariffs on China? You know he walked that back. You know what he walked that back with? He literally tweeted, and I'm not joking here. Essentially, oopsie, just got a little heated. I like China. Want to make it good, not bad. DJT out. Meanwhile, in the market rebound that happened as a consequence of those two tweets, a couple of private crypto accounts made hundreds of millions of dollars by essentially shorting the market or anticipating a bump that nobody should have been able to anticipate. Somebody close to him just said, hey, can you tweet this? Then a day later tweet that. And they made $100 million.
The other candidate that is running for mayor is Andrew Cuomo. He released a statement yesterday speaking about this indictment of Attorney General James. He couldn't even name her. He couldn't even name Donald Trump. And he couldn't do those things because he knows that his narrow path to City Hall is paved by the very billionaires who put Donald Trump back in the White House. And Donald Trump's getting a good return on his investment right now because he's seeing a mayoral candidate, a former governor, unwilling to lift a finger when we see this unprecedented attack, not just on our democracy, but on an attorney general whose only crime is standing up for the people of New York.
So the mayor of Chicago and the governor there have said they would not be supportive of sending the National Guard to help ICE agents with their actions in their city. And that what they got was the President Trump calling for their jailing. If he calls for the same thing here, using the Guard for ICE agents, what would you do from City Hall?
Yeah.
You know, I would first of all agree with Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, who has made clear that there's no need to deploy the National Guard here in New York City, not for safety, not for security. We trust the NYPD to be in charge of delivering that very thing. And I don't even have to think about the hypothetical of what Donald Trump will.
He's so smart, dude. We trust the NYPD to handle this. It sounds like he's just glazing the police, but what he's actually doing is reinforcing the police versus ICE dynamic, that any incursion by ICE is an implicit insult to and threat against the NYPD. He's so good at this, man. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Call for me because he's already called for me to be deported. He's already called for me to be denaturalized. He's already called for me to be arrested. And these are the kinds of threats that we know we will have to walk through to defend the people of this city. And I'm prepared to do that.
Would you keep Commissioner Tisch?
I've said that I'm actively considering it. And the reason that I am is that I appreciate her swift and decisive action of uprooting corruption from the upper echelons of the PD and also presiding over a historic drop in crime across the city.
I'm curious.
Makes sense too. You might want to keep the current commissioner because anyone you appoint might not be trusted by the NYPD. If you think you can get along with the existing commissioner, you might be able to get better control out of the NYPD than if you forced a new, more compliant one in, because they might not be respected enough to be able to control the department.
So are you 33?
But I'm about to be 34.
About to be 34.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm only
Every day I get
4 years
older.
older than you. Okay, so I'm curious who you'd surround yourself with, and also past 5 or 10 governors, mayors of this city. Whose administration, whose leadership would you model yourself most after? Or just who do you think was one of the better?
You seem to criticize AOC for not being hard enough for the Democrats, but it seems as if he and her are kind of the same page. I think there are critical differences. The first of which being that he's still running, whereas AOC has been in office in an incredibly safe seat that she could keep winning for the rest of her life. Also, I think that a lot of Mamdani's battle with the establishment Democrats, he's been able to wage implicitly by being this massive cultural force and by throwing into contrast the Democratic leaders who are not willing to bend the knee and endorse him, right? And he's been successful in doing so. AOC just implicitly or explicitly doesn't really speak against the Democrats. And there are some capitulations she's engaged in that I just, but she should be aspiring for higher office. Well, she would win in a Senate race for sure, but still, she needs to be critical of the Democrats. I think that Zoran is critical of I think that if you are a fan of Zoran, it is very, very obvious that you should hate establishment Democrats. I don't think the same is the case for AOC. I think you see it in their fan bases. In Zoran's fan base, you see like an overwhelming discontent with the status quo Democrats. But in AOC's fan base, you see a much broader, like, normie Democrat coalition full of people who aren't, like, maybe fans of Schumer, but they're not outright hostile against the Democrats, which I feel like they should be.
Mayors of the past 5 to 10?
So to your first question, I would surround myself with the best and the brightest. And that means hiring people on the basis of excellence, of merit, of actual track record of results.
And by the way, people who tell you no?
Yes.
Because are you good with people who tell you no?
Team of rivals?
Absolutely. You cannot have a team that is characterized by the quickness with which they say yes to an idea. You have to have a team that ensures that when you're privately discussing an idea, you're picking at the strengths and the weaknesses, not one that is just trying to usher it into public. And so that's been a focus of how we're thinking about who we're going to appoint, who we're going to hire, people that can deliver, not the basis of identity or ideology, but results and their track record. And when I look at the mayors of the last few administrations, I find pieces of inspiration, frankly, across all of them.
How they ran government.
Yes. You know, I will say, when we look at even someone like Rudy Giuliani, right, who I have many critiques of, I admire the fact that he made public transit free with the Staten Island Ferry. When we look at Mayor Bloomberg, he presided over 850 acres of new green space. He presided over a transformation of the streetscape of the city and a focus on delivery of service that has sometimes been lacking. Bill de Blasio delivered universal pre-K, which is something that took an immense amount of strain off of the backs of so many working class families. And even Mayor Adams, for whom I have no shortage of critiques, his proposal to bring forth City of Yes, which will increase housing production across the city, that's something that deserves to be built on.
So we have people that come on the show that are very concerned about you as far as your relationship with Jewish voters in New York City.
Oh, you mean the Jewish voters who praised him and voted for him overwhelmingly? Those ones? Okay, yeah.
That there's like this simmering anti-Semitism. I know months ago you were asked about 1,000 different ways and times to something about globalizing the intifada. Do you condemn that statement? What do you say to those who believe that you're going to be, if you're mayor, you will, if not be openly hostile to Jews in New York City, at least you will not be as sensitive to their concerns about that? And you see this. I mean, you go around New York City, and if they're kids at a Jewish school, there have to be armed guards outside all the time. There's constant threats. What do you say to them that say we can't have him in there?
Does he rehearse every point that could be made before the mirror? Like, how is he able to make up his points? He's not making anything up. He practices and he rehearses. None of this is ad-libbed.
Anti-Semitic.
You know, first of all, to be clear, not only am I not anti-Semitic, but there's no place for anti-Semitism in this city, this state, this country, or this world. And just yesterday, I was with a number of rabbis in Williamsburg. We were celebrating Sukkot. And as I was there, one of the rabbis who was sitting alongside me was the same man who had told me months ago of how for decades he had left his door open in New York City. And in these last few years, he started to lock it out of a fear of rising anti-Semitism. And my job is not only to protect Jewish New Yorkers across the city, but it's also to cherish those same New Yorkers. So it doesn't just mean increasing funding for anti-hate crime prevention programming by 800%. It doesn't just mean sustaining and increasing police presence outside of synagogues on high holy days so that Jewish New Yorkers can worship without fear. It also means ensuring that we're embracing a curriculum. We have a curriculum here in New York City called Hidden Voices that celebrates the breadth and the beauty of Jewish life. It has to be implemented across our entire system. And what I've found is that too often we're allowing these moments of support, these moments of protection to be based on who you know. A rabbi calls me on Yom Kippur, says, can you send more police to the synagogue? I make the call. That rabbi shouldn't have to make that call to me. It should be something that he knows is there.
Let me ask you also, in this age of growing anti-Muslim rhetoric,
we believe in that here, do we? Oh, I'm actually a little bit impressed that we remembered that existed.
In this city. What do you do to protect them again and the quote others against growing stem of hate crimes?
I think the first thing is a recognition that this is a city for all of us. This is a city where all of us belong. I would be the first Muslim mayor in New York City's history, and it would be an illustration of the fact that anyone, no matter where they're from, no matter their faith, no matter which borough, that they too could lead this city. And what I've heard from Muslim New Yorkers is a fear about what it means to be Muslim in public, and I can relate to that because I've faced that myself over the course of this campaign, where There was a man from Texas that was recently arraigned in Queens for making death threats on myself and my family. He said
I really, 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 really hope he's able to stick the landing with the actual mayorship. I just know that a large portion of the online left is going to abandon him because he, like, I don't know, praises the NYPD, which he has to as a mayor or something. You know, there was a big lefty Twitter account that's been, like, rabidly anti-Mamdani lately, to the point where they were making up a quote from him. Like, they made up a quote. They put a quote over his face, and the quote said, like, it would be Trump-like to arrest Netanyahu or something. Because Mamdani said that he would direct the NYPD to arrest Netanyahu if he ever landed in NYC. But they were making up that he'd walked back on that and made up a quote. Inhumans of capitalism. Yeah, that one. Was it the squirrel? No, it wasn't the squirrel.
wanted an IDF bullet to go through
I mean, maybe her also. I don't know. She is deranged.
Skull. There have been threats of the kind that I now have to walk around with a security detail. But none of it will dissuade me from moving through the city that I love, because that's what it means to stand up to the kind of rhetoric and the politics we've seen across this country. It's believing in people across the city.
Democratic nominee in the New York City mayoral race, Zoran Mamdani. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
See you soon.
And by the way, Mika, for those who say he's too young,
yeah,
he's going to turn 34. So
yeah, come on.
Come on, baby.
We got 8 days.
Exactly.
Actually, honestly, a really, really good interview. Like, he pretty much nailed it here. And positive coverage in Morning Joe is a big deal. You know? Like, Morning Joe is like a fortress of people who you'd think would continue to be negatively inclined. I saw a decent-sized lefty account say they don't like Zoran anymore because they're liberal family members like Mamdani now. These people are such traitors to the cause, man. It's so, like, awful how they don't give a fuck about any of the marginalized people or poor people they claim to care about. It's all about being an edgy contrarian for them. The moment you get the opportunity, you get close enough to power to make a difference, and they're like, not cool anymore. Goodbye. They love losing. Yeah, they love losing because they love whining. And you're not accountable to your ideas if you're in power. In that way, they're pretty similar to the Democrats, to be honest. You know? Democrats also like losing because they get to whine from outside the seat of power. Barry Weiss did her first hit job at CBS against Zoran. Some NYPD officers worry about Mamdani becoming the NYC mayor, the Free Press reports. The Free Press? I like how she's also advertising her partisan blog in the title here. This would be like John Breitbart buying CNN, and then the next day CNN runs an article. Breitbart claims Mamdani is, well, thankfully nobody watches this garbage anyway. The original version of this headline had his name spelled wrong. Mamdani. That's funny. He did kind of walk back the arresting Netanyahu thing. Well, it's not going to happen either way, but what did he say?
And Mayor Mamdani, would he welcome Prime Minister Netanyahu to New York City for whatever he comes for, given...
By the way, I should note that, like, the idea of hinging the viability of Mamdani's candidacy on whether or not he would direct the New York City Police Department to arrest Netanyahu is the most, like, virtue signal politics, fake lefty bullshit I've ever heard of in my life. Like, ignore everything about being the mayor of New York in the incredibly unlikely event of Netanyahu landing in a place where there's a high likelihood of him getting arrested. What are the odds that you would, you know, the NYPD, it's not even like a local jurisdiction thing. Like, what are the NYPD going to arrest and charge him with? I don't know the logistics here, but it's such a, like, wow, you spelled America with a C and not 3 Ks. Some lefty you are. It's just such a virtue signal.
The US is not a signatory to the ICC, so he can travel to the US, unlike a lot of other countries. Would a Mayor Mamdani welcome Benjamin Netanyahu to the city?
No. As mayor, New York City would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a city that our values are in line with international law. It's time that our actions are also.
Even though the US is not a signatory to the ICC?
No, it's time that we actually step up and make clear what we are willing to do to showcase the leadership that is sorely missing in the federal administration.
Is the plan still to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he comes to New York City with Donald Trump as his human shield?
Look, I think I want to just first give us the context of this, right?
Wait, what? Series? Wait. Oh my God, this is so dishonest. This video is meant to juxtapose the two responses that he's made over time, but they cut out. Zoran proceeds to film it. What the? Dude, these people are so dishonest. Oh my God. To play the answer.
There is that deep sense of the contradiction.
This is you literally cut minutes out of the answer
in our politics.
So you, as mayor of New York, want to hold him to account,
and that is the importance of this city, is to showcase a model of what politics could be, and to showcase that we are a city that believes in international law. Now, look, to be clear, I'm going to operate within the bounds of the law. I'm not Donald Trump seeking to create my own, legal system as I make my own decisions.
How is that? Even with missing 2 minutes of context, how is this? Wait, I'm sorry. Did people think that Zoran meant he would invent his own law and arrest Netanyahu on no charges? What the man? These people are so unserious. None of these mentally ill, fake lefty Twitter tryhards give a shit about improving the life conditions of anyone. They don't care. They're not an ally to the proletariat. They don't read theory. They don't believe in anything. They just like being perma-outsider contrarians who always have a smug word to say about anyone they perceive in power. They're jealous of Zoran because he's better than them in every way, and he achieves seemingly effortlessly the level of personal power and prestige they fantasize about every night before they cry themselves to sleep. It's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. It denigrates. Frankly, even me looking at this is an insult to the left. Like this would be like I'm giving them a bad picture, It'd be like me doing the Blair White thing of like, well, let's look at what trans women are up to, and then I find like the worst trans woman, and I let the implication of this being a broader tendency settle. Most lefties are not like this, guys. The vast majority of left-leaning people, online or offline, are real human beings and not these fake internet contrarians. You don't need to let your perspective be distorted, okay? Most people with blue hair are nice people, I assume. The cut to the mucho texto is very funny, not gonna lie. It is particularly funny that they would try to make that as an example of Mamdani waffling, but like, I don't know, man. Anyone with any credibility or good sense at all looking at that would immediately be able to tell that it was not created honestly. Like, here's the juxtaposition, cuts away to text saying, yeah, and then he rambled on for a while.